What's up YouTube, Dale here from Zephyr, and today I am bringing you an update to one of my favourite decks of this current format, and that is of course Majespecters. Now as a preview, this is involving a very small super heavy samurai engine, and the idea behind that is that you can set up a form of protection, or you can also set up a route into your XYZ before even conducting your normal summon and before getting into new, as this is probably one of the weakest points of the entire deck, as unlike all of the other Majespecters in the main deck, this one doesn't have the targeted protection. So you need to be a little bit more careful. However, when you're building up your board, your main deck monsters will only ever really lose to a hand trap like Ash, and your extra deck monsters will only ever lose to a hand trap like Imperm or Veiler. Especially with Morna running around, those targeted effects are a little bit more consistent in the environment you're looking for, which is why the Super Heavy Samurai engine is probably something that is the best ideal partner for this deck in order to provide you with that protection. So with all of that out of the way, I'm going to dive headfirst into the profile, show you what we've got and explain why we've got it. Any questions at all, put them in the comments down below, and make sure you don't forget to smash that like button, hit that notification bell and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more upcoming content. Diving headfirst into the profile, you start off with the Majespecters, so triple Bambuku, pretty straightforward and simple on this one. This alongside, and why the heck this isn't a foil yet, I'll never know, the Yata is absolutely insane. These are your starters to everything you need to, because the idea is that Yata will ultimately lead you to Bambuku. It gives you a little bit more because it will also go through the Majespecter winds, that when you go for Bambuku and you're searching out your Yamarashi, which is your porcupine, you're going to be able to reset that winds, which can be very, very important. Even more so, winds will be more important with this particular version, just because a lot of people forget that there is a secondary effect on the Rui, and when the Rui is tributed, it allows you to put it into the spell and trap zone, or technically into the pendulum zone, as a scale. Now, annoyingly, the scale 5 isn't that great for any of the high level monsters, but it works out perfectly for exactly what you want to play, because more times than not, when you're using the Super Heavy Samurai engine, you're going to want to get the Big Benkei and keep that in your pendulum zone, and then the other pendulum scale will of course become your Rui, and then off the back of that, you've got the exact perfect scales you need in order to pendulum summon both your Super Heavy Samurai monsters all the way from levels 2 to 4, and of course your Majespecter monsters, which are levels 3 and 4 itself. Carrying on with the rest of the Majespecter monsters, I'm now only playing the one Ogama and the one Kibi. So ultimately, I cut the cat. I didn't think it was that necessary. I mean, even in the pure version or the Draco Slayer version that I was playing previously, I didn't feel that it was that necessary. So cutting that out was definitely one of the first places I want to go to when I was trying to find the space to fit in the Super Heavy Samurai engine, and I've never really looked back. Both of these I feel are absolutely necessary for the deck. If you're not playing them, then you're technically only going to be playing like a Draco Slayer build with a small Majespecter engine, or a Super Heavy Samurai build with a small Majespecter engine, whereas this one still maintains the core essence of the deck. The idea is that you're using the Super Heavy Samurai engine to provide you with protection, so you can utilize your full Majespecter engine, because once you're ending your board on 2 set spells or traps off of the back of the Kibi and of course the Ogama, followed up with your rank 4 of Rui, and then maybe something along the lines of like a Baron or anything else along those lines, you're able to protect yourself even more so, backed up by different traps that you can help you recycle them, or one trap and then one spell that you can recycle with the Yamarashi as well. Carrying on with the other Draco Slayer, which is obviously the other Majespecter, which is also a Draco Slayer, is of course Majesty Pegasus. This card's absolutely insane, gets you to access to your field spell, and I'm playing 2 field spells in the deck. One of them is not Secret Village, that is more for the side deck, but it'll really come down to the local environment as to whether or not you play the one that I'm choosing to use, or whether you play to main deck the Secret Village. The only other Draco Slayers that I'm playing is the one Dynamite Power Load and the one Luster Pendulum. The idea is that my Majesty can also help me get a start my combo off without needing to rely on the Super Heavy Samurai. Now obviously the pair of them do clash, but the idea is if I've opened up my route to the Super Heavy Samurai engine, that should be everything I need to not even worry about these. And if anything, I'm going to be utilizing this in order to get into my other level 8 synchros. That being said, this can also help you get into your normal level 8 synchro that you're going to go through with the Super Heavy Samurai engine, as well as being able to set up your plays. Now, many times before in the pure version, just being able to open up Majesty Pegasus and a way to get it to the scale and another Majespecter gave me access to get to my field spell. Not to mention that this could then pop what was in the other scale, set up the Power Load could then summon the Majesty with a discard can then get me into the field spell, and the field spell then becomes my 1-card combo because that pops the Majesty in order to get me access to my Bambuku. Bambuku then gets me access to the Yamarashi. Yamarashi summons itself down, and then straight from those two, they're going to be linked off into the Nui. So you're going to be putting through a lot of paces, and you haven't even conducted your normal summon by the point you get to that. Then for the Super Heavy Samurai engine, we are playing, of course, triple Bike. Bike is probably the least effective of the Super Heavy Samurai monsters we are playing, in the sense that once you've used it to search out what you need to do and it's in the graveyard and you loop it back and do everything you need to, its job's pretty much done. Like, you're not going to be able to use it as any rank fodder later on in the turn. You're not going to be able to use it as synchro fodder later on in the turn, because it kind of needs like a level 6 in order to get you to where you want to go. So it's morely going to be there to search out a Wakashi, and then your Wakashi is then going to become either your scale that you're going to need it, or it's going to become that level 4 pendulum monster that you're going to need. Now, arguably, if you wanted to, you could cut Bike down to 1, and then you're technically playing 4 versions of Wakashi, but the idea is you want to maximize your access to this card, and that's why you're going with 3 Wakashi itself and 3 Bike, because you're technically playing 6 copies of this. The only card you don't ever want to see in your hand is, of course, the Big Benkei. There is the argument that you play 2 Big Benkei, but the issue is this card is only utilized by going into the scale. It's no use being in your hand because it is a level like 8 monster, so it's not going to be any use for you to be able to pendulum summon it out, because you're not really going to have your high levels in order to get that. And even if you have Wakashi in your other scale, it's still too high of a level to be pendulum summoned out, which can be quite dangerous for you being locked with a monster this heavy in your hand. Now, playing the second one is the idea that if you see one, your combo is not completely dead, but I still feel that these could be utilized as scale fodder. You would just go back to playing the original Majespecter Draco Slayer route that you would do anyway. The other is you want to kind of bury this where it's all possible, and what we're kind of missing is a way to put it back in the deck if we do see it. But it's risk and reward on that one. If you do want to play a second copy, by all means you can do so. I would probably then arguably looking at cutting one of these 2 down, but I still think they're too important to be playing any less than 3 of each. The only other Super Heavy Samurai we are playing is the Soul Gaia, just because this is the level 4 free extender. So the idea is that once you're going through your normal combo, you're going to be able to summon this out. And then the best thing about that is Rui is just generic rank 4. So it doesn't even need to have a pendulum level 4 to be made. It can just be made with both of these. So if you've gone through the Bike route, of course you can go into a Baron to protect your plays going forward, and that will be off the normal summon of something like a Yata or a Bombuku. That being said, if you don't open up that route, or you've already opened up a route to everything you need to, you can actually overlay both of these into a Rui, and then you have the ability to tribute this off to put it into the scale if your opponent is trying to interact with you. And the best thing about that is when you're activating Winds to tribute off the Rui, by doing that, Rui goes into the pendulum scale, Winds resolves because you tributed a monster on the field, you get to special summon the Bombuku, and the Bombuku can then search out the Porcupine, and that's going to let your full combo go off. So it's great that this actually has direct synergy with the Majespecter cards as well, which is why it's really, really kind of cool to be playing this engine. Then, of course, for board breakers, we've got triple Cashtira Fenrir. Obviously, all of your cards don't really require you to control no monsters per se. So being able to summon down Fenrir, being able to protect your board, set it up and everything you need to. Not to mention it's a great go second board breaker. If you summon this down and then you're trying to utilize Wakashi as well, especially when you're able to recycle your Majespecter spells back from the graveyard. So it's very rare that these will actually stay in your graveyard when they are there, meaning that you can use this again in the future if it did get negated the first time around. The best thing is you're able to add a Fenrir, then do the Wakashi combo, and if you're going second and your opponent tries to interact with you, you can Fenrir it and deal with one of the issues that they might be presenting on their end board as well. If you don't want to play Fenrir, you can play something like Super Poly. The only issue with that is the extra deck is quite tight, so you're trying to find those 3 Super Poly targets can be a little bit more tasking than it needs to be. That being said, you can also play talents. You could play more hand traps like Nibiru. Personally, I went with my hand trap selection being Imperm and Pot of Prosperity. Now, I know Prosperity isn't technically a hand trap, but I wanted this deck to be as consistent as possible. And when I'm activating a card like Prosperity, the idea is you're probably going to be going through more, though, 3 rather than 6, just because you'll then either be digging for less so your Super Heavy Samurais, because you'll be putting a spell in the graveyard, but more so for your Majespecter starters. So it's one of them ones where it's like, okay, well, if my opponent, which is the idea of the Super Heavy Samurai engine, has used every single one of their hand traps to try and stop this going through, all I need is a normal summon of a Majespecter, and I get to go full combo anyway, which is exactly what I was trying to do, and that will ultimately lead me with 2 trap cards set, 2 monsters that cannot be targeted, or a Rui, which will allow me to spawn out those monsters that cannot be targeted, and then give me more resource to go again the next turn. For the spell cards, we are playing triple Majespecter Wind. Some people do say you can cut this down to 2. Personally, I feel 3 is still really, really important, because what I really like about this is if I hard open it, it means that I don't need to rely on Yata to go directly for Winds. I can actually get Yata to get me into a form of interruption in the form of Cyclone, or if you wanted to go back to main in it, you can also play the Storm. For those times when you are going second and you want to be bouncing a card rather than destroying a card, it can be very, very helpful. But being able to loop back your Cyclone as well can be very important for you. I can see the understanding of playing Majespecter Winds at 2, just because those times if you open it without access to a Wind spellcaster, However, the only thing we've really changed from this build and a previous build is we've cut out one wind spellcaster, so it still works exactly the same for you as it needs to be. Plus the combo, like I said, even if you open up your super heavy samurai combo and they're like, okay, there's no wind spellcaster to get to, all you need to do is get to your Rui, which is exactly very easy to do as explained, and then you can Majespecter wind and go full combo anyway. For the trap cards of Majespecters, of course, we've got the one Tornado and the one Tempest. And then for the field spells, we've got the one Majesty Pegasus and the one Necro Valley. Now, I just feel that my environment actually struggles more with Necro Valley. Yes, it hurts you a tiny bit because it won't allow you to reset the Majespecter winds from the graveyard with your Porcupine. But the idea is that you would have already reset this and done exactly what you needed to then go into the Necro Valley. It also won't let you special summon the wind monster back from the graveyard if it's there, but it's a little bit more difficult to get that monster to it in order to revive it back, which is why I'm also not playing Selene in the extra deck. Now, of course, with Rui is the one way you're going to get them to the graveyard, but more times than not, if you're going to be going down the Super Heavy Samurai route to make the Rui, it's going to be Super Heavy Samurais in the graveyard, not wind spellcasters. So you're going to be using this to special summon from the hand more so than not, and that's when you'll be able to regain your resources, which is where it's going to become even more useful for you. Obviously, if your environment loses more to Secret Village or to Spellcasters, then straight away put that in. But the reason I quite like this in comparison to Secret Village is if I'm going second, for Secret Village to be useful for me, I need to either be knowing that my opponent has got loads of quick play spells set, and the idea is that I activate Secret Village and have a Spellcaster face up on the board already to shut that out completely, or I need to break their board and then activate it. Whereas if I activate Necro Valley, it can be very, very damaging because then it means stuff like Princess can't be coming back from the graveyard and it can't banish cards from the graveyard. It means if they use a Flamberg during my turn as well, they can't Flamberg to bring back 2 level 1s because it moves cards in the graveyard. Then for the slight flex spots, and this is the issue with the Super Heavy Samurai engine, is the Super Heavy Samurai engine itself is like 8 cards. So those 8 cards would be more hand traps if you wanted to. I've tried to keep it a 40 card deck. If you want to bump it up to 60, by all means you can do. But I wanted to maintain the consistency of the normal Majespecter build that I was playing, and then just add the Super Heavy Samurais in there for a bit more protection. So the cards that I've gone in there are a bit more generic is 2 Pot of Prosperity and triple Infinite Impermanence, just because being able to utilize Infinite Impermanence, you're able to play around stuff like Talents, which I expect is quite predominant in most matchups, and it allows you to go first or second. So being able to trade this as a 1-for-1 negate on a board, should you be going second, is really important. And then the Pot of Prosperity, digging into your Majespecters specifically, can be massively helpful because you don't really want to be trying to go for this and reveal all Super Heavy Samurais, because then you won't be able to use all the Super Heavy Samurais effects, because you will then have a spell card in the graveyard that, unlike the Majespecter cards, you're not going to be able to reset and clear out of it. So arguably these could become talents if you wanted to, but you want to be using Pot of Prosperity as an extended consistency rather than a starter. Like, you don't want to go Prosperity, like I've said, digging for a Super Heavy Samurai card. You want to be able to use your Super Heavy Samurai cards, build up your board, pull out all the interactions, and then use Prosperity if you need to dig in for a Majespecter monster. So that's it for the entire main deck. Entirely up to you on those last 5 spots. I just feel that Imperm is the best hand trap to be able to go first and second with. And then when you're playing a card like Necro Valley, you're kind of getting the balanced protection that you need to be able to not worry about playing stuff like Ghost Spells and DD Crows and everything else. So moving on to the extra deck, I am playing 2 Majespecter new. Now, usually more times than not, once you've resolved this, that's it. You don't need to worry about it again. But if the first one does get negated, you will have the ability to go into other monsters. So that's why you want to play or save the second one for the second turn, should you not be able to complete the OTK, which you should be able to off the back of Super Heavy Samurais more times than not, as they will give you a bit more of an aggressive board. But it also gives you that ability to play a second if you need to. Now, the other Link monster that pretty much serves as the exact same point of what new does is Beyond the Pendulum. Now, as long as you've got the Pendulum Scale set up, ready to go, going into Beyond the Pendulum first to eat out that Imperm can be very, very important, because then you can utilize 2 Pendulum monsters, including a Majespecter monster, so you can use that and another Pendulum monster to get into your Orthrus new. Whereas this one requires 2 effect monsters plus a Pendulum monster, so if new does get negated, you can use that plus a Pendulum monster to get in Beyond, and you'll still have the exact same outcome. For the other Link monsters, of course, pretty staple in the form of IP Masquerena and an SP Little Knight. Obviously, keep in mind that once you use new, the idea is that your board is pretty much going to end on just Majespecters there at that point anyway. So you'll want to be making these first, and then you can put new to a zone that this points to if you need to. And then, of course, you've got Exceed the Pendulum and Access Code Talker. Obviously, the idea is that I wanted a Link-free Pendulum monster that didn't need to utilize the graveyard in order to extend, quite like Selene. And it wasn't always guaranteed that I would get monsters in the graveyard for Selene to revive. So going for something like Exceed the Pendulum that lets me add back from the extra deck to the hand, and then also special from the hand, gave me more direct routes to get into Access Code. I would still have the exact same outcome of Access Code of having a Wind, a Light, and then possibly by the time I've made it a Dark monster. So I'm getting 3 pops off of this, and it's going to gain 3 3k, so it has the same outcome as Selene. It just gave you a bit more consistency by not always needing to worry about putting those monsters into the graveyard. For the synchro monsters, of course, we've got the one Stardust Dragon, and this is, of course, buddied up with Ignista Prominence and, of course, Baron de Fleur. Now, the idea is, off of the back of the Super Heavy Samurai engine, you're going to go all the way into the Axel Synchro Stardust, then work your way into a Baron to provide you with that protection. Yes, you could play original Stardust in this deck so that when you do activate the Axel Synchro, you tribute off to make Stardust and then instantly Synchro Summon, meaning the Baron is unaffected. Can be massively helpful. But the idea is that I didn't really have much space in the extra deck for it because I wanted to play such a range of cards that I kind of needed to go with the one Axel into the Baron and risk it for the outcome. Ignista, of course, is such a great card to be able to non-target spin, which is why you still want to be utilising it at 1. But if you didn't want to play this, you could arguably cut the Ignista Draco Slayer as well, because then you don't need to specifically have that level 4 tuner in order to make this. You're going to be going through your Super Heavy Samurais just to make this. The one fusion we play is the one Dynamite Power Load. This is obviously pretty straightforward and simple on that one. Tribute someone, give you protection and everything else you need. For the XYZs, of course, 2 Rui. I just feel that if you're going to use the first one through your Super Heavy Samurai combo to tribute off to put it into the scale, you can very easily make a second one, and then that could be used as detach materials and special summon Majespecters from the deck. The last 2 rank 4s are slightly flexible, but we've gone with the Pegasus card just in case you get something like D-shifted or floodgated, and you need to make a card that will allow you to stall out the turn until you draw the out. And then, of course, you've got the Exiton Knight, which will allow you to break boards, being able to deal with floodgates, go second as a very cool option, as long as you maintain the right amount of resource so that you don't have more than your opponent. This one can very easily be flexed out. That could be the spot if you wanted to play for something like Super Poly. It could also be the spot if you wanted to play for something like a Selene or other alternative Link monsters as well. It does give you a bit more of a difference. But I do like the idea of it. That it's like, okay, my opponent's put on quite a lot of advantage. I can get 2 monsters on the board without utilising my scales. This will allow me to go into Exiton Knight, use this effect, destroy the entire board. The only thing that I'll really lose is a big Benkei in the scale, but then off of that point on, you're hoping that you still got the Draco Slayer engine to fall back on, or you would have specifically gone into an Exiton Knight with the ability of still being able to go 1 card combo to get you into your new or anything else you need to, because once you get to that point already, your opponent then needs to play through a Tornado, a Tempest, or a Cyclone, and then you've still got the winds to help you float around some of your resources, as well as the ability to float around bringing out a Bambuku for more resource to join up for the next turn to help you push for that OTK coming off the back of Access Code and, of course, Exceed the Pendulum as well. So that's it for the entire profile. Hope this has given you an idea of your own build as a bit of an update. I do like the Super Heavy Samurai engine as a form of protection, but as I've said, the way that the Super Heavy Samurai engine kind of works with this deck is you're sacrificing hand traps and board breakers or just more forms of interaction to your opponent to be able to provide you with more protection. Yes, the other benefit of the Super Heavy Samurai engine is the fact that it can allow you to play through forms of interruption, because your opponent will end up burning quite a few resources or negates trying to stop it as it's building up, and that will then leave the door wide open for your Majespecters to come in and do their low investment combo. So that's why it's really, really kind of cool is the pair of these are both low investment combos, so like 1 card combos, but Pendulums as an overall kind of mechanic is a little bit more invested because you do need to get those 2 scales. If you can't get those 2 scales, you're not going to be able to complete the board the way you need to. So that's when you need to be a little bit careful, and that's why you're trying to protect those or use different engines in the form of the Majesty Draco Slayer and the Super Heavy Samurai engine to provide you with those scales without having to burn through or hard draw those scales every single time. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share. Till next time, as absolutely always, stay safe and, of course, happy dueling.